wondering how I got into this mix.
All right, I'm here to wake you guys up a little bit. I want to first say thanks to Mark, thanks to Garrett for inviting me. Of course, thank you to David Casey, who just talked about blockchain, and as Mark said, he's doing all kinds of great work in different areas. So 12 minutes to share some really important ideas. Let me get a couple commercials out of the way. I have some books and shirts for sale if you're interested. After you hear what I have to share, come say hi. I have an hour-long talk tomorrow on the Sunday on the Village stage at 3:30. It'll be much more in depth. Not at all about what I'm about to talk about, completely unrelated, but you might be interested in that as well. And so, as Mark said, I focused a lot on, through independent journalism, on technology, surveillance technology, decentralization, blockchain, 3D printing, you name it, as well as trying to expose some of the corruption and some of the darkness in our world. And I think it's interesting, I love that I get to follow David, and that the talks, I noticed the two talks after me are about how blockchain is going to change the future, how blockchain is going to empower humanity. And so David just kind of went over some of those examples of talking about currency. We're already starting to see the health industry look at blockchain and how they can use the technology in just a number of different ways that we just can't even fathom yet, how blockchain and these decentralized technologies will underpin the world of the future. And part of this world of the future is what is known as the Internet of Things. Is anybody familiar with this term yet? The Internet of Things? So the Internet of Things is quickly coming into reality, and essentially what it is we're moving past the phase where you have your smartphone and a laptop. We're moving towards the phase where everything is going to be interconnected, where you're going to have the smart fridge, the smart home, the smart light poles, the sensors in the street that allow for driverless autonomous vehicles, the robot assistants, virtual reality, augmented reality, all these things that many of us growing up watched in TV and movies and thought, wow, I can't wait for that to happen. We are on the cusp of that reality. And that is what is known as the Internet of Things, which is essentially the interconnected world of tens and thousands of sensors that will allow this futuristic world to come into fruition. And for a lot of the beautiful things that some of us are waiting for, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are waiting for this reality to take place so that they can create new businesses and innovate and lots of exciting stuff. And so you're going to hear all about that from the next two speakers. I'm going to contrast that and tell you guys about the downsides, the scary sides of these technologies, all right? These are things that I think more of us need to take into consideration, especially as, whatever generation you're a part of. I don't want to assign a category to you, but we're all here looking for answers. Right? Who came to Envision looking for solutions and to learn? Anybody? Anybody other than me? I thought so, right? We're looking for ideas on how we can change the world and how we can be prepared for the future world that's coming in. So as we have this Internet of Things that we're moving into, how does that take place? How do we move to the Internet of Things? The way we do that is something that is known as 5G. So 5G stands for the 5th generation of cellular technology. We're currently in 4G. This is what your phones are typically running on, except for out here in the jungle. So just to give you a little brief background, 1G, regular phone calls. 2G, phone calls and texts. 3G, phone calls, texts, and video. 4G, streaming, fast video, downloads, everything that you've become accustomed to. 5G, what they're saying, what the industry is saying is we're going to have speeds 1,000 times faster. There will also be, I think it's really loud. We're going to have thousands of times faster downloads, supposedly, and we're going to have this world, like I said, with driverless cars, robot assistants, virtual reality, augmented reality, where you imagine you have a little contact lens, and as you walk around, it scans everything in your environment. Instead of you having to pull out your phone and say, Google, tell me what that is, it automatically scans, it tells you, on a heads-up display what kind of tree you're looking at, or looks at a person and tells you what public information they have available. So there's a lot of really interesting aspects to this, and typically the way I've seen it as a journalist focusing on technology is a tool, just like anything else, right? It's a neutral tool. In the hands of the free people, it's decentralization, it's localization, it's empowerment, it's freedom, it's propelling humanity forward. In the hands of, say, the corporations in the state, it's surveillance technology, it's control, it's taking away freedoms, it's limiting those things. And that is where we find ourselves. We find ourselves on the crux of this brave new world that we're entering, and it's quite scary to see, for one, the amount of silencing that is attempting to take place from big wireless, I'll just call them that, for those of us who choose to speak out. So let me tell you a little bit of the concerns about 5G and about the Internet of Things. Again, I'm contrasting everything you're going to hear after me about how the world is going to be so much better with blockchain and with all these kinds of things. As we move into 5G, which 5G is not just going to be a simple change like going from 3 to 4G. In order for 5G to work, we have to install tens and thousands of new towers, what they call small cells, which are about the size of your backpack or the size of a fridge, literally everywhere. Now, I don't know if it's taking place yet in Costa Rica, but it's happening in the United States, Canada, Australia. Most Western nations are pushing for this right now, and they're saying by the end of 2021, we're going to have 5G everywhere. So the 5G spectrum, it operates on millimeter waves. They only travel about 200 to 500 feet. What that means is in order for this to operate, for us to have this world of the Internet of Things, these towers, these small cells have to be established literally every 200 to 500 feet. So we're seeing this take place now in the United States, where they're being put outside of schools or outside of people's homes. And the worst part of it all is that back in September, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission in the United States, they made an agreement with the wireless lobby that said that the people, you guys, if you live in the US, that the localities, the cities and the states have no say in how the 5G rollout takes place. That means your city cannot decide how much to charge, where they should be placed, whether this should be tested, or anything. This was passed back in September, not passed in the sense that you got to vote on it. There's just some bureaucrats coming together and passing a rule. So this happened in September 2018. About a week ago, the Trump administration said, you know, we're ready to embrace 5G. So this is happening, whether you've heard about it or not, it's happening right in front of you. If you've heard anything at all, it's more than likely a commercial from Verizon or from Sprint telling you how fast it's going to be and get ready to get your new 5G foldable phone and all these kinds of things. Because that is what they want you to pay attention to. They want to keep selling us these things. They want to keep us constantly chasing the latest, newest devices and not stopping to question, are there any health effects? Are there any privacy and security dangers? Yes, yes, yes. In 2018, the organization known as Project Censored, they're a nonprofit that's been around for 25 years. Every year they release a list of the top 25 censored stories. In 2018, their fourth top story was an article from The Nation magazine called "How Big Wireless Convinced Us That Cell Phones and Wi-Fi Are Safe." And in that article, in that investigation, they detail how this is essentially like big tobacco from back in the day convincing people that cigarettes are safe. So there's an increasing amount. I don't want to spend too much time on one single aspect, but I will say if you're interested in more of this, since I've only got 12 minutes, come to me. You can check out my YouTube channel. I've got tons of interviews, interviewing experts, interviewing ACLU attorneys about the privacy and security concerns, interviewing the executive director of the Environmental Health Trust about the health concerns. And my point here is that the health concerns and the privacy concerns are being covered up by the United States government and by the big wireless lobby. And I know we're here to have a good time and to focus on the positive aspects, but again, without confronting the darkness and exposing it, then we can't find a solution, right? If we don't know what's happening, then there's no way we're going to be able to do anything about it. So this is taking place in Houston, where I'm from. Houston is one of the first test rollout cities, and that's kind of why the guys invited me to come here. I've been going to city council for the last 6 months and just presenting them with information, bringing them studies, and bringing them more and more data. And they keep just ignoring me and laughing at me. But what I do is I rip that little video off the city's website and I load it up to my YouTube channel, and now those videos are getting hundreds of thousands of views, and they're waking more people up, and I'm getting people from all over the world saying, hey, help me, I want to organize in my city. How can I do something about this? Tell me more about this. So this is where I've been putting a lot of my energy into lately. It's not the only topic I'm focused on, but we're here to talk about technology, and as I said, I want to highlight some of the, the shadier aspects of this. So when you hear about the Internet of Things and 5G, be sure to bring these things up in the conversation. When you start seeing Sprint and Verizon, your local cell phone store, promoting to you and telling you you can get the new 5G phone at this discount, because this is what they're doing. They're saying if you sign up today, you get a new iPhone, or you get a discount on the YouTube Red subscription and things like that. Ask them, hey, I heard that there were some privacy concerns, some health concerns. Do you know anything about that? More than likely, they're going to say no, or they might not even be informed, and that's an opportunity to present them with some information. It does seem, at least in the States, because of that federal rule I just mentioned, that there is, and I hesitate to ever say this, literally nothing we can do to stop it, but I do think that there are tactics we could take locally. First, informing more people, because again, if people don't even know this is going on and know it's a problem, then there's no way to take action about it. And I do have some ideas that I don't have time to get into now about how we can take local action. City councils, a buddy of mine in Orlando, Florida, he's doing the same thing. His city council was at least brave enough to admit, hey, we have the same concerns you do, but we can't do anything about it. The federal government has usurped our local power and we have no say in this. So 5G, the Internet of Things, blockchain, a lot of these technologies have the ability to erase any little bits of privacy that we have. I don't know about you guys, I know that a lot of people in the digital age have kind of given up on the idea of privacy because, well, I mean, we're carrying cell phones that are tracking us and listening to us all the time, and if you've got an Alexa or a Google thing or an Echo or any of those things in your home, they're listening to you all the time as well. If you've got a Samsung smart TV or any of these smart devices, when you hear smart, typically it means it's got a microphone, it's got a camera, and you better believe those companies have access to that, and they're more than willing to hand your data over to the police. You know, it's not about whether you're doing anything illegal or wrong, it's just that if you look through history and you look at any historical conflict, the moment that the people lose privacy, that's one of the last bits of freedom that we have before things go horribly wrong. Because back in the day, it was people were afraid that the soldiers were going to be quartered into your house and that you would have no privacy, you had no say of whether or not the king sent a troop into your house. Well, now they don't need to do that. They just give you a smart TV, just like 1984. Anybody read 1984? Winston talked about the telescreens that were on the screen and you never knew if it was listening or watching. You had to go over here in the corner and smoke a cigarette and all kinds of things like that, right? We are moving into that age very quickly, and it's because we are embracing the technology. The only other aspect I want to mention as well is social media and the kind of influencer culture, how this ties in there. Last year I was here speaking on this stage talking about decentralized social media alternatives, and the last year I've abandoned Facebook, abandoned Instagram, abandoned most of the traditional platforms. The only one I'm still using is YouTube, because I'm trying to support not only blockchain-based alternatives, but just more decentralized alternatives. There's Steemit. Has anybody heard of Minds.com? Minds? Check out Minds.com. Everybody make a note. Minds.com is an alternative. If you ever watched Joe Rogan Experience, the founder of Minds was just on Joe Rogan's show like last week. His name's Bill Ottman. He's a very accessible, very open guy. He wants to hear how he can make a platform that we will use, that we will embrace. You're never going to get that from Mark Zuckerberg or these people who are making millions and billions of dollars off selling your data. I've been using that. I was using that platform for 10 years, using it to spread information, to organize tours, to spread ideas, and I never got a dime from them. Now I join Minds, and it's decentralized, blockchain-based, where people can wire you tokens, like he was talking about Ethereum tokens, and I can use those tokens to boost my work to more people, right? There's no ads on there, they're not selling your data, and I'm not out here just to promote Minds. My point is that there are alternatives that exist, but if we choose to stay on those mainstream platforms, then nothing's going to change, right? So
cool. So I'm excited that I get to talk to you because I really wanted to. And she just invited me back on, so I'm like, cool. Alright, I'm gonna sit down. So yeah, a couple things came up for me during your talk, and one of them is there are really interesting decentralized applications of blockchain technology, and then there are really like Black Mirror applications of it, and every technology is like a double-edged sword. It's a tool that can bring more freedom, or it can bring more control and consolidation of power. And so I'll give a little contrast of like the 20th century and the 21st century in terms of finance. So like in the 20th century we had like, let's say, a couple hundred government currencies, a few major banks, and let's say 200 like nation-state government systems. In the 21st century, my hope is that we will have like a bunch of experimental currencies, a bunch of experimental like micro governance systems on a community level, and that new models will emerge that we haven't before had the freedom to experiment with. But there's also the Chinese government creating their own state cryptocurrency now, as far as I know, Russia as well, Venezuela as well. If you think about what that means, it means the Chinese state will be able to see all financial activity on a state-controlled public blockchain forever. It just lives there forever. A blockchain is a really interesting thing. Like, kind of romantic Italian artist friend of mine was talking the other day about like you can put like an expression of love or art on a blockchain and it's there forever, which is pretty cool. I mean, barring like an EMP shockwave that like takes out all technology, but that's like a pretty interesting thing to think about, that we can like create something and then it just like lives in like the cloud forever. But the Black Mirror side of it is that if we imagine that there is a government-run and controlled blockchain like the Chinese government is preparing right now, then that means the state has like complete surveillance over everything. There's also a really interesting project unfolding right now that is like this. Maybe you know the name of it. It's like a belt from China, like the New Silk Road or something. Not to mixed up with the Silk Road like dark market that I mentioned earlier, but the old Silk Road, like this trade route from China all over like Eurasia, and basically China is creating this route, this like road that will circulate goods and services through like 10 or 15 countries, like connect basically half of the world's economy together, and they're running like a supply chain logistics blockchain, which basically means they can track the movement of goods and services across like half the world. And not only that, but they'll have all the data, all the information, and like data is the new oil, as they say. And that is something that is kind of like the dark side of blockchain technology when it is in the hands of the existing powers that be. So I'll pass to you now.
Give it up for David Casey again. Got a lot of knowledge. And yeah, I just want to, I guess, continue kind of on with that train of thought. What I was saying before is where he was going there, is that China is really the perfect example for this, to see how a superpower will use technologies that, again, in the hands of the people, our freedom, our decentralization, our empowerment, and in the hands of these centralized states and giant corporations, lead to more tracking of data. And you were asking about AI earlier. You know, another example of that is China already has one of the most accurate and massive facial recognition systems in the world. And it's been even tested by certain journalists, where they'll go out into a crowd of people where there's hundreds of thousands of people, and they'll send their picture into the facial recognition system, and within 2 minutes, police are able to find them in any crowd anywhere in the country, especially in Hong Kong. And that is being run by an algorithm, by artificial intelligence. So all of these different things, for all these years when you've been taking your selfies, those face prints is what they're called. Facebook's been taking those and selling them to various corporations that use them for whatever, different kinds of things. Some of them are more, harmless, innocuous, like they just want to sell you ads and things like that. But others are also being shared with government databases. And as David was saying, when these governments are taking a blockchain technology and that information is stored forever, I mean, they already have all of our faces. They already have, tons of data on us. And I don't necessarily know what exactly the answer is. I use technology. I love the benefits of it. I'm not here like as a Luddite saying we should all just, go backwards at all. But I do think that at a place like this, where we're considering solutions and looking for answers, that we should recognize that we are carrying around a tool that has a great amount of power, but it also has a great amount of power to take away some of our freedoms as well. And I think some of that's already been done.
So I saw my friend Phil in the audience there, which reminded me of something. We were planning a little skit last week. It never got done, but I'm going to pitch it to some friends, and maybe we're going to produce it. So basically, we're at a retreat center running like this event called the New Living Experience last week, which is basically like mixing work, play, yoga, kind of like digital nomad retreat. And we're doing these like spoof startups, right? So the spoof startup goes like this. So we have this like basically like 5G free zone that's like this like new Amish or neo Amish like zone, right? And basically it's like 5G free and like no facial recognition and like like we just don't allow that stuff in. No implants, like none of that. And the idea. So basically first we have that, right? We have our little neo Amish colony. And then in the neo Amish colony we have our startup, which is basically shungite and tourmaline, like pulverized crystals that protect against radiation. And we're going to pulverize them, and we're going to make shirts that are like 5G protective gear, like clothing. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I mean, for one, do the skit, because I'm sure everybody will enjoy it. But I also think, honestly, there's been a lot of talk of permaculture in the community, and that's the direction I'm moving in. My plan is in the next 2 years to move towards building my own intentional community built around a lot of the principles that I promote in my work. And I do think that there is a need for these type of spaces that he's talking about here. I mean, imagine as we're moving towards where there's already nations where people are getting implants in their hands for convenience, right? Like RFID chips for employees. You know, if you're going to work here, hey, we need you to get this RFID chip to scan your way in as a security protection. There's all kinds of things. Imagine, I mean, just think about this. What would you do today if your government, wherever you live in the world, announced that it was now mandatory to get an RFID chip? That was going to be the ID for the future. Your passports and your licenses were no longer functionable. If you wanted to use any public services, you had to have this chip. So there would obviously be people who just follow the herd and go along and do it and think it's really cool and everything. And maybe that's where you fit in, and that's fine. But there is always going to be those who reject those types of technology. And I think we're going to move towards a world where there will be these, whether we call them neo-Amish or whatever, where there will be sort of subsectors of society where people say, like, hey, in this community, we're not doing the chips. We're not, you know, we're going to have, like, Wi-Fi free zones or whatever they may be, right? And then you're going to also have other sectors of society where people want to embrace transhumanism, for example. They want to augment their body and they want to, you know, get like robot legs, and I mean, it will really radically alter the paths of the future, because there might be some employers who say, in order to work here, you have to have this augmentation, or you have to have the contact lens that has the heads-up display that tells you everything, because the guy next to you without it, he's going to have to pull out his phone and do the kind of old school way, right? So it's really going to start to change the way the future is. And I think these are things that we need to consider, because when those times arrive, and we're right on the cusp of them, you got to make a choice. You know, and we're all going to make different choices. Personally, I'm interested in trying to collaborate with other people who want to build communities that at the very least are skeptical of these technologies and take our time before just rushing head on into them.
All right.